Hi, I'm Jim Doti, and welcome to Dialogue with Doti and Dodge. We have a very special guest and a special show. Our guest is Andrew Carroll, who is a New York Times best-selling author and the creator of the Legacy Project. We're very fortunate at Chapman University because this is the place of a world premiere of his newest play, If the Sky Were Paper, based on several of his books, Behind the Line and War Letters. It's great to have you on the show, Andrew, and we're going to show you now a clip of that play that was produced and performed last night.
We work all day, almost without eating. And at night, drunk soldiers come and hit us with wooden sticks. My body is black with bruises, like a piece of burnt wood. Sometimes they throw us a raw carrot or a beet, and it is shameful. We fight over every little piece or even a leaf. The other day, 2 boys escaped. So they lined us up, and every 5th person was shot. I was not 5th, but I know I won't get out of here alive. If all this sky were paper, and if the seas of the world were an inkwell, I could not describe my suffering.
Wow, it's very compelling. I'm Christina Dodge, and we also have here with us today Chapman University professor John Benitz and our studio audience here in the Studio Theater and cast and crew.
Now, Andrew, how did this Legacy Project, explain what that is, and how did that lead to this play?
The whole purpose of this is to encourage veterans and troops to preserve their war letters. And ironically, I didn't come from a military family and had no interest in history, to be honest, growing up. Right before Christmas, this is about 15 years ago, our house burned down and everything was destroyed. The worst thing for me was losing our family letters. And I'd taken them for granted up to that point. And we didn't have anyone, again, in the military, but these were just very personal correspondences. And it got me thinking about the importance of letters in general. And I remember talking with friends of my dad who happened to be veterans and saying, what do you do with your old letters? And they would say, I just threw them away. And the more I talk with people about this, I discovered that these are men and women who had served in some of the most important campaigns in our history. Some guys were at Normandy or the Tet Offensive or Desert Storm. And they just didn't feel that what they had written was that important. And so on a whim, I wrote to Dear Abby, the advice columnist, and said, I want to sort of start this project to get Americans to preserve their war letters, to go in their attics and their basements and so forth. And could we do something for Veterans Day? And she said, you know what, let's do it. And so I'd set up this little P.O. box in Washington, thinking I'd get a couple, dozen responses or something. And 3 days after the column ran, the post office called. And it's always a little weird when the post office calls you. And so they said, is this Andrew Carroll? I said, yes, it is. They said, you need to come down here now and pick up your mail. And I said, I didn't expect anything this quickly, but yeah, I'll jump on my bike. I've got a big backpack. I'll be right over. And they said, no, you might want to bring a car. And there were these bins and bins and bins of letters coming in from people all over the country. And this was just the first couple of days. And then from then, it just kept escalating. And then I would talk at veterans groups and go around the country. And I think I visited all 50 states. People sent in photocopies of the actual letters.
Okay.
And we asked them, don't send us the originals. We want you to hold on to those.
Yeah, of course. That's what I was wondering about.
Although we did have one gentleman send in a letter, a photocopy, and he eventually donated it. But when I opened it up, it said, I think it was like May 1st or something, 1945, Adolf Hitler. And there was a swastika on the top. And I thought, oh, what is this? And he had crossed out Hitler's name and written his own name. And it turns out this young soldier was part of the Americans' squads going through the Nazi high command in Munich. And they walk into this one apartment building. And it's extravagantly furnished, and there's chandeliers and all this stuff, and they realize that this is Hitler's personal Munich apartment. And so he goes over to the desk, and he sees Hitler's stationery, and he sits down and he writes a letter about Dachau, which he had just visited, So from like ground zero of evil, he's describing, what he had just seen a week before. And then Hitler had just killed himself in Berlin, and so it's just this incredibly intense letter. And I'm thinking, there are just infinite number of correspondences like this out there that this gentleman said he was probably just going to throw away, or he didn't even know what he was going to do with. And we've had it exhibited at Holocaust museums and all different places since then.
And that's the Legacy Project.
That's how the Legacy Project got started. And we're still looking for correspondences. And since that time, we've received 85,000 letters from every war in America's history, from the Revolution up to the present
So
day.
these are revolutionary letters that the families passed on from one generation to the other,
Yep.
and now they photocopy them. My goodness, incredible.
Yep. So
and then that led to this play that you wrote.
Right, exactly. Because I'll let John tell the story, but he heard about it, and I think we both felt that there was just such an extraordinary aesthetic value to what these troops were writing. And I think there's just something very compelling about it. And I saw the performance just last night. And we've had these letters read before, not as a play, but just at kind of honorary events. And we've had senators and Supreme Court justices and Broadway actors and all sorts of different people. This is the single best performance I've ever seen of these letters.
Our students are performers.
What the students have done, I think, has really honored these troops and their families, because we do include family members as well. They serve in many different ways too, and John, who really had the vision for this. And I'll do a little inside baseball here. When I wrote the script, I said no images, no music. I just want the letters being read, and then there's a narrator that we've got this great actor Garrett who's doing it, who kind of weaves through the whole story. And John said, well, let me just try some things.
It's 9:05 Sunday morning, and we've been bombed now for over an hour.
There must be like
That could be
1,000
trouble.
images that have been used, but every single one of them is brilliantly picked. And it enhances the experience. It doesn't detract from the letters, which I was afraid it might. And it just flows together so beautifully, and I think they really complement each other in a way that I was just completely overwhelmed by.
I think it really does enhance it. So John, tell us, how did you get involved in this project? And you've been involved from the very beginning, right?
I had read about Andy in National Geographic sometime in, I think, 2007, and was sort of fascinated by this project and this story of this guy who'd gone around the world collecting letters of war. And I sort of let it sit for a while, and it just couldn't go away, or it wouldn't go away. And there's something that sort of kept sticking with me, and I'd let actually several months go by, many months go by, I think. And somewhere in mid-2008, I carefully crafted an email to Andy. I tracked him down, through Google and whatnot, and as I would say, I know that this guy had just read some 80,000 war letters, so he's sort of a gourmet of letter reading. So I'd better write a good letter. So I spent a good amount of time crafting this letter and shot it off, and he responded quickly, and we began phone conversations and so on and so forth. And I just told him I really believed that this could be a beautiful play, and that that there's dramatic material, the humanity of the letters. Neither of us were interested in any sort of political statement of any kind. It really was it was meant to be a play about the people and their experience and the experience of war.
So besides preserving all the memories, what do you guys hope that people will take away when they see this play?
I think it's very easy to see troops as these sort of, the faceless mass that go off and fight these wars. And I know that what I wanted to do with this, and what I think John has done so brilliantly, and the cast members, is to humanize these men and women. So we don't just see them as soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, but somebody's father, somebody's child, somebody's sibling. And you really get a sense of who they were as people. And the one thing that we were, I think, all adamant about was that you're not reading letters or hearing letters that you would expect. It's not just, dear mom, I miss you, so forth. It's letters written in code. It's letters that are very funny. There's a lot of humor in the play, which people aren't expecting. But that's how troops cope. They use whimsy, and they're very funny individuals to kind of deal with the stress of what they're under.
Everybody who's anybody is here as well. All you have to do is listen in on the VHF radio telephone. Well, hello. This is the British warship, calling the vessel 4 miles off my starboard beam. Oh, be so good as to respond on channel 16, or I shall reluctantly be compelled to blow you out of the water. Well, over.
We wanted to find the unexpected, and that's what draws an audience in, because then it's not just, okay, I know what's coming up. I hope that with every letter there's a bit of a surprise, and what I loved about seeing the performance was these are letters I've read 1,000 times, and these actors and through John were finding nuances to them that even I hadn't heard, after almost 10 years of going through them.
How many letters did you use for the play?
I never even thought about it. How many do we use about?
There are 67 characters, and some recur. Some of the letters recur.
Okay.
So these are the best of the best of the best.
Yeah, and
Wow.
as part of that journey, Andy had sent me a draft, and we talked back and forth, and I had his books. He sent me copies of War Letters and Behind the Lines, and I became very familiar with all the letters in those, and it just became a long process of, swapping this letter out for that, and how do we best create an arc, and, inject humor, and all, again, with the point to find the humanity, within these letters, and still put it in a dramatic form that works.
And how many different nationalities? Just curious, or many, or is it mostly?
Roughly about 20 or so.
Okay.
Most of them are, I think, are American correspondents, but I think it was actually U.S. veterans who encouraged me to expand the collection into foreign correspondence. And they said, look, these wars impacted many other people,
Right.
and I was surprised that they wanted me to include even our enemies. So, I went to Japan, I went to Vietnam, I went to these different countries. Now, in some cases, they've been allies and enemies, and that was really interesting. We talked about that in the performance, of just
Depending on
how,
when. Yes.
depending on the war, exactly.
Well, I think that would be so interesting to hear the different perspectives. It makes it so much richer.
And we're so fortunate at Chapman to be the venue for the world premiere. I'm already hearing rave reviews of those who've experienced this play, and really
talked
it
to
is
my mom
experiencing.
already, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I know how gifted our theater students are in performing. So I'm going to be seeing it tomorrow night, or experiencing it tomorrow night. But I'm interested in this idea, with this point you mentioned, John, about a narrative arc. How in selecting the letters, how do you have a beginning, middle, end, a climax, if you will, a denouement? I mean, did you select letters to have that kind of an impact, or is it more of an even kind of emotional impact? Is there a build-up?
John has been integral to this process of going back and forth with how to create that kind of arc, because I wanted a narrative to it. We've tried just having the letters read without much context, and they are powerful enough, but it really helps to know who these individuals are. And so just one quick example, we talk about civilian casualties, and there's this very powerful section where two parents are writing to their 9-year-old daughter, who is being, she actually was lucky enough to get a lottery ticket to go to Canada during the Blitz on London. So a lot of families were trying to get their children out of England during World War II because of the constant bombings. And so they're writing this very joyful letter to their daughter, who's on her way. I'm going to get choked up because the letter really affects me. But they're writing this very cheerful letter saying, you're going to love Canada and so forth. What they didn't know is that the ship that she was on had already been torpedoed. And it's a very intense experience.
Now, sweetheart, don't forget what we told you. Show Auntie and Uncle that you really appreciate the opportunity they have given you to have a holiday in one of the most interesting countries in the world. You remember that photograph you had taken at Christ Church School? Well, Mommy wants to know if you'd like us to send it to you. Please give our love to Auntie and Uncle, and when you write, you must tell us all about what you are doing.
If you don't know what happens to the daughter, it loses its impact. And so the narrator's voice is trying to, bring you along to give you a sense of what happened. But with respect to the overall arc, I felt that the journey around the world to these 35 different countries in some ways was the story. That the letters are the focus, but to give it that sense of beginning and ending. I had this experience in Iraq when I flew in there of meeting with these young Iraqis, and long story short, one of them said to me, "Why do you focus on letters?" And I was halfway around the world visiting with archivists, historians, and everyone. We all just sort of took for granted that letters are important, but why are they important? And so in some ways the play is trying to answer that question of why do we preserve these correspondences? What value do they have? And so I know John, I think, as I said, was instrumental in giving some feedback on that.
And we'd actually workshopped the play somewhere about halfway through the process, something like that, up at the Odyssey Theater in Los Angeles. It was produced by the Fountain Theater, and we had 6 actors on stage, which is also interesting. The play was originally written for 6 actors with no visuals, no music, nothing. And so we expanded it on the recommendation of Nina Lenore, our chair. She said, you know,
She's
let's
chair of our
accommodate.
theater program here at Chapman.
Correct, and she said, you know, let's find parts for these actors, you know, in our department, all these wonderful actors, and so I expanded the roles to 18, but in the workshop up in Los Angeles, we held a talk back afterwards, and we had you know, it was a packed house up there, and everybody was really wonderfully vocal and helpful to us in terms of what worked for them, what didn't, the role of the narrator, which became a really big question, because as Andy said, in many ways the letters can stand by themselves, you know, but to make it flow as a piece of drama, it needs the context, as Andy was talking about, and we need to be taken on this journey, and it becomes part of a personal journey, which is originally what interested me in the project. A guy who had gone around the world collecting letters of war. Fascinating, I think.
What did the people that sent in the letters, what did they want to get out of this? Did they feel good about doing this because they were preserving the memory of their loved ones, or?
You know, it depends. If it was the veteran himself or herself, often they were writing about somebody they lost and they wanted that person remembered. More often than not, it's the family members who are contributing the letters from, you know, it's their father, grandfather, grandmother who was a war nurse, whoever it might be. And so each had different motivations, but for the most part, to remember those, I think, who had served in some capacity.
So instead of an oral history, this is a written history, if you will. Are you partnering with another organization to preserve these and make these letters available to historians and others?
We've done some of that already, and we've worked with different groups, you know, History Channel, PBS, and so forth, and some archives. And I do want them to become as accessible as possible for people, and ideally on the web, so that anyone around the world can type in and, you know, read what these troops have written. And I want to emphasize that we include family members too, because they serve as well. And you know, whether it's the spouses pacing in the kitchen, you know, on the home front, or the children, everyone's impacted by this.
Your picture stands before me at this very moment.
Why don't you send me some of yours? I've worn yours out already.
I just have to kiss that sweet face every time I look at your picture. Oh, it is mail time, and I do want to get this into the box by 4:30, so I will have to close. I could write to you by the hours. Take good care of yourself, and I will do the same. So bye-bye, my dear hubby. I enclose all of my love for you. From your loving wife, Goldie.
I have to say that seeing the play elicits so much emotion. It really forces you to look at that particular war differently. I mean, it's very, very touching.
We really wanted these to be unexpected, so that you think, okay, here's a Civil War letter. We've heard these all before, but it's like, oh, I won't repeat one of the letters because it's a little risque, but but it's like, wow, I didn't know they wrote that way back in the Civil War. So you know,
you can repeat it. It might bump up our ratings a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll leave it to the audience's imagination, but it's
you'll draw more people to
what message do you want the play to convey, or how do you want people to leave thinking about an idea, a thought? Is there any?
You know, and again, it's one of the things that kind of captured me in the beginning is and has held my interest in the project throughout is the universals, you know, that keep coming up over and over. There's a wonderful letter that's introduced fairly early on in the play where he says humor, love, fear, family, reconciliation, hope. Those are the universals that make us all tick, that make us who we are, that let us know we're alive, and importance of family, the importance of reconciliation.
Did that cross cultural boundaries, or did you find that letters from German families or soldiers or Japanese or Asian differed from an American culture, or was it we're all part of a common humanity? What Is there any?
Absolutely. There's a commonality,
Yeah.
and that's in fact expressed
That really came
wonderfully
through, I
in the
thought.
play, where the narrator says,
The emotions were timeless. The words and the sentiments are almost identical. If these letters were stripped of their names, dates, and salutations, it would be nearly impossible to distinguish between wars, nationalities, and ethnicities.
I mean, that is as profound as it gets, you know, that
Yes.
we are all interconnected by these sort of threads, you know.
I thought
and,
that came through loud and clear.
What
Yeah.
future do you want? Do you want to take this show to Broadway or to other?
Well, I would love to see it translated around the world and taken to different countries because it is so universal. And there are a lot of layers to it. I mean, it's not, I mean, that is one message to it, and it's also, I think, for, you know, I'm having gotten to know so many American veterans, the sacrifices they've made for this country. And we have this beautiful letter written at the end by this a female soldier, an American, who's serving as a peacekeeper. And she writes very eloquently about what she's going through and how meaningful this is to her, and how this elder gentleman in Albania comes up and thanks her sort of on behalf of the troops who fought in World War II to help liberate them back then.
And tears came to his eyes, and for the first time, I felt the impact of our presence here. And that makes me all the more grateful for what I have, and all the more humble for all that I have taken for granted. Please pray for the victims over here. They are much more our brothers and sisters than I think we know.
I think there is definitely an emphasis on how much Americans have sacrificed in these wars, but what you see is the commonality of how much people across the world have been impacted.
Yeah, John, in terms of our men and women actors here at Chapman, and I'm so proud of them, I mentioned that before, we have a nationally accredited theater program, but it's a generation that's not directly connected. These students, most of whom have not, probably all of whom, were not involved in a war. In directing them, how did they take these letters and interpret them and bring them to life?
First of all, many of the letters, they're written by
People their
that are
age or younger.
their
Yeah.
age, you know, draft age, and I think from the beginning that has you know, an immediate impact on these actors. I also feel that, you know, I mean, I approach just fundamentally the way that I work with actors is that no matter their age, I feel like they have everything in them that they need, you know, to be able to.
So there wasn't overt coaching or, you know,
Oh, sure, we
method
you know,
to it, the method acting, and how do you get into
They
the
were
role and
so
all this.
good.
You know, was the ghost of Marlon Brando there?
I won't say the ghost of Marlon Brando, but one thing that we talked about, in fact, opening night, in my little speech, you know, to the actors in the dressing room right before they walk on stage, is that, you know, these are real people that they're portraying, and that not to get too sort of strange and metaphysical about it, but I asked them to open their hearts up to the sort of essence of these people as they're being spoken, that to breathe these people in and to share that with us. It's a very different experience, and I'm sure they'll be happy to talk about it, of portraying somebody who was once alive and is no more, as opposed to a writer's fabrication. I think there's something really deep and stirring about that you have a true obligation to honor those people. And I think they did that beautifully, and I think they took on the challenge and did in fact honor those people. And as far as the method and all that, I won't get into that. Yeah, I use a lot of different. Yeah, we worked very hard for 7 weeks on the acting and and staging and so on to create what we.
It was incredible. The acting
what
was
we
incredible. Yeah. So, are you searching for a producer that would take this to the next level and
Oh, we hope so.
invest in it?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I mean, I think, you know, the letters resonate with people from all different backgrounds, and I've noticed that from, you know, past readings in the books and so forth, that I think everyone can get something out of it and really be moved by it. So there's, I think, a huge potential out there. But it is very exciting to have it, you know, as you said, this is a very prestigious university, great theater program, and to have it start here is wonderful. And so I think we have very high hopes for it. And
Well, if you decide to take this on the road globally, I will be pleased to give a presidential pardon to all of them, or leave, if you will. So you don't even have to worry about recasting. You already found a gifted cast, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That they are, yes.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in this, and thank you for bringing first of all, for helping bring these letters. What, 80,000, how many again?
Yeah, that's about, and counting.
80,000 strong,
so
and
we're still
counting,
looking,
and growing.
yeah.
So you'll hit 100K soon.
Warletters.com. I hate to make the,
Okay, no, let's get it. Warletters.com.
That's how people hear about us. But actually, just very quickly, we put on the website how to preserve your letters. And that's very, even if you don't want to send them in, we understand that. They're private, they're personal. Please don't throw them out. Keep them. Save them for the next generation.
Yeah. Did you have to get permission on the letters used in these?
Yes.
In the play?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
even Kurt Vonnegut. We have a previously unpublished Kurt Vonnegut letter.
wow. Well,
yeah.
he's not so the fan.
This is, I talked to him before he passed away.
Before he passed away, I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you, Andrew,
Thank you all very
for
much.
bringing
Thank you
this,
to John,
bringing
too,
this
for bringing in this
opportunity to
incredible
Chapman
cast,
and
so.
giving our Chapman students an opportunity to show how truly talented they are. And thank you, John, for everything you're doing to bring out the best in these young people. And good luck, and I look forward to seeing this tomorrow.
Great. Thank you very much.
Enjoy it.